Welcome to the House of Truth. Today we're resuming our series on Joshua. Last looked at Joshua. We talked about possessing the promised land, and we end it with this law with the fact with this observation that largely out of a reaction to the Gibeonites making a treaty. A series of events went and they won about half the territory that we saw last time in their possession in about 6 months. And they spent a long time winning the other half of what they won under Joshua. And the day we're going to look at how long that took and what happened after they were done with this long war. And we're going to focus today on on the possessions or the land of Judah and Joseph, or maybe I should say their boundaries, would perhaps be a little bit even better. Now we're going to continue. So we're going to resume here in Joshua 13 verses 1 through 3 with these words. Now Joshua was old and stricken in years, and the Lord said to him, "You're old and stricken in years, and there remains yet very much land to be possessed. This is the land that yet remains. All the borders of the Canaanites, all of Gershuri, from Seor, which is before Egypt, unto the border of Ekron northward, which is counted to the Canaanite. 5 lords of the Philistines, the Gazarites, the Ashtothites, the Eshkelonites, the Getites, and the Ekronites. Also the Ivites." Okay. Getites are people of Gath. If you remember those sons of Anak that Joshua did not kill went to Gath. Okay, we talked about that. That's that we're into that area that we looked at last week. So notice the Philistines. This land's counted to the Canaanite because it's the land of Canaan, but the Philistines are singled out. And if you remember, the 7 nations they were destroyed did not include the Philistines because the Philistines were not Canaanites. Remember, the word Philistine literally means invader, and from the Latin word for Philistine, Palestinia, we get Palestinian. And they also are invaders. They never owned the land. They just sort of went there and took possession. They came in as like sharecroppers. When the owners sold the land, they just refused to leave like squatters. Okay, and they even took money for the land as if they even took money to buy. They even sold the land, so to speak. With the Jews the Jews who came there gave them enough money to go somewhere else and live comfortably. And they took the money, but then refused to leave. Well, these are their descendants, their ancestors, I should say. That's why there's this wording here. They're in Canaan, not part of it. And I want to draw something else to your attention. Just a little note. This is Joshua 13. There's 24 chapters in Joshua, and half of them are about them crossing the Jordan and possessing the promised land. It's just interesting to note that half the text is devoted to what happens afterwards. That's important, and and notice how the Lord tells Josh something he already knows. He was always stricken in years, and the Lord tells him this, and yet there's very much left of land to be possessed. So he's telling him, what he's letting Joshua know there is, you're not gonna. I brought you in to possess the land, but I really brought you in to start the process. It's not going to finish under you. Letting Joshua know you haven't failed me in some way by not obtaining all of it. It's not going to finish under you. And the Lord does some very interesting things about that, and He explains why. And we'll look at that in a future lesson. Now, to continue on with this lesson, in Joshua 13, in verse 4 through 6, read the following. And from the south, all the land of the Canaanites, and Meara that's beside the Sidonians, unto Aphek, to the borders of the Amorites, in the land of Giblites, and all Lebanon toward the sun rising, from Baal to God under Mount Hermon, unto the earing end of Hamath. All the inhabitants of the hill country, from Lebanon to Mis Misro Mis Misrophoth Maim. There we go, Misrophoth Maim, and all the Sidonians. Them I will drive out from before the children of Israel. Only divide you it for a lot by lot to the Israelites for an inheritance, as I have commanded you. So, so again, this wide range, okay. And notice what he's telling him. This is all the land This is all the land that they're going to possess. Give them the boundaries again of the western part, what's west of the Jordan River. And he's telling them to go ahead and divide it, even though they don't possess it. In fact, they possess, of this part of the land, they don't possess half. They don't possess a quarter of it. In fact, notice, and notice how far up it says to go, all the way up to, all the way up to. Here's a moth, okay, to the boundaries of a moth, not to the. There's a city up there called Horim, a little higher. Not Horim. I'm sorry. Homs today. Homs, little, and this province today still called the Moth. It's in, and it goes to so you're to go to that's be your border there, and Mount Hor specifically mentioned as we've shown before. It's to go along here. Now this part here, we don't know where these towns, these question marks. They don't know where they were, and more likely from scripture to place scripture, it appears more like the border went this way on this side of Damascus, just right around Damascus, and then down here, okay, and then down this way along here, okay. They got this perhaps a little exaggerated. That should be much smaller, but nonetheless, what Joshua and them took, as we mentioned last week, was an area about 20 miles or 30 kilometers your metric by 100 miles, 20 miles or so going east to west, 100 miles or so going north to south, okay, going north to south. And it only went up to about here. Didn't go all the way up, okay, only went up to about here. So it's about 2,000 square miles, or again, if your metric is 160, that's about 100. That's about 160 kilometers north, and be about 50,000 square, 5,000. I'm sorry, square kilometers. Okay, so really a very small part of what they're supposed to take on this western side. Like I said, maybe a quarter at most, and even there, we're going to see they took it. In fact, it may have not went more than Hatzor. Hatzor maybe as far as north as mentioned, and here's Hatzor. Okay, they may have taken it, but that it's one thing to take possession. To take possession is another thing to keep possession, to keep the squatters out, as it were. And we're gonna look at that as well, okay? Because remember, the armies all together, so they go somewhere like Hatzor, they take it, burn to the, but then they all return down here to in this area of Gilgal down here, etc. And they're not really leaving anyone to. They're not occupying the land as they're going along. The army is staying together, has been staying together in this phase, and so what they're doing here is this: God's establishing them a base that they can operate from for future expansion. We'll talk more about that in a moment, okay? On the west side of the promised land, like you had on the east side. Because remember, the east side, we talked about the boundary would be like way over here. I mean, not, even with this perhaps exaggerated, you get down about the Sea of Galilee or so, we're told, and it goes all the way over to the Euphrates River, down like, here's Ammon down here. So this big long chunk over here. And so they haven't possessed near all the eastern promised land either. Now, we're going to continue on was this division of the Western Promised Land that they have that they most of which they haven't destroyed the people. They've much less settled the land. They've started settling part of the land because they needed food to, they needed crops to grow crop foods for their army, etc. But they haven't really settled the land. That was part of the long process, the long war. And we'll look at how long the war is in a minute. Now, therefore, divide this land for inheritance to the 9 tribes, and the half tribe Manasseh, with whom the Reubenites and the Gadites have received their inheritance, which Moses gave them beyond the Jordan eastward, as Moses the servant of the Lord gave them. From Or under the bank of the river Arnon, the city is in the midst of the river, and all the plain of Amidabah under Dibon, and all the cities of King Sihon of the Amorites, which reigned in Heshbon, under the border of the children of Ammon, in Gilead, in the border of the Geshurites and the Maccathites, and all her Mount Hermon, in all Bashan under Salca, and all the kingdom of Og of Bashan, which reigned in Ashtaroth and in Edrei, who remained of the remnants of the giant, these did Moses smite, and cast out. Okay, going back to our map again. Kind of again, this area here on the eastern side, he's reminding Joshua to divide that. They take possession of that under Moses. Now now go ahead and divide it as Moses as Moses had said it should be divided as it should have been divided under Moses as Moses had agreed in accordance with that. So just go ahead and divide it that way. Go ahead and divide it that way. Now, but there's a problem here, and it's a recurring theme we're going to see here. Even in the Eastern Promised Land under Moses, this problem, that's when it began, and it's consistent. And we'll see that. Nonetheless, the children of Israel expelled not the Gershurites, the Maccathites, there we go, Maccathites, there we go, Maccathites, but the Gershurites and the Maccathites dwell this day among the children of Israel and among the Israelites until this day. Not only did not only the tribe of Levi gave none inheritance, the sacrifice of the Lord God made by fire their inheritance, as he said unto them. Okay, so a couple of themes here we're going to see repeated over and over again. They're here, and the first one's this. Notice even under Moses, they didn't get rid of everyone they're supposed to. They didn't get rid of everyone that was on the eastern side, even the little part where they had. Okay, and these Gershurites and Maccathites, Maccathites are trouble, and the problem wasn't solved that day. And remember that Melecha and I went before him to wiping everyone out, and we saw how some Amorites were driven out. They didn't die; they escaped. Perhaps outside the Promised Land, certainly out of the area where Israel was. Perhaps even just went across the Jordan River the other direction to the Western Promised Land, where there's more Amorites. So God doesn't get rid of all their problems. God could have destroyed all these people for him, but he didn't at that time. But notice that this continues a long time. Unto this day, well, you got to realize the book of Joshua and Moses were compiled. That yes, the text, the source texts they came from were written, mostly at the time they occurred. But they were compiled later into these books. And when they were compiled, there's often some commentary of what's going on at the time of the compiling, which is 500 years later, at least here in the case of Joshua. As we showed before, it referred to the mountains of Judah and Israel last week, or last time we looked at this, which didn't happen to the division of the kingdom between after the time of Solomon. Gives us a rough idea. So it's like that's like 600 years later, okay. But the facts were written down that occurred at the time. Well, the other theme that keeps going on besides this, the troublemakers aren't all gone, is Levites not going to get any of this land. And and here's what they're getting instead. One of the things they're getting more than one. The sacrifice of God are made their inheritance. They never have to worry about to eat. Food's gonna be brought to them all the time. Never, no need to, that. So they're never gonna have to worry about growing crops or anything like that. It's gonna be brought to them. Now we're gonna continue on here. We're gonna continue on here. We're gonna look at the we're gonna look at the tribe of Judah's the tribe of. I'm sorry, I didn't need to do this. Okay, we're gonna look at the tribe of Reuben. I'm sorry, Reuben's next. And this is again what they're getting on the land that Moses already divided, the two and a half tribes on the east side. And here's what we read in Joshua 13, verse 15 through 19. Again, God's reminding Joshua what Moses gave him and make sure they get it. Because they've been fighting with their brothers over in the western promised land. And Moses gave to the tribe of the children of Judah, Reuben, according to according to their families. Their coast was from Aroer, that is on the bank of river Arnon, and the cities in the midst of the river, all the plain of Medavah, and Heshbon, all their cities in the plain, and Dibon, and Bamoth Baal, and Beth Baal Meon, and Yahaza, and Kedamoth, and Mephathah, and Kirjathaim. There we go. Kirjathaim, Kiryashim, Kiryathaim. There we go. Kiryathaim, and Sebna, and Zerath Sharar in the mount of the valley. Okay, so this is the first part of it. And the things that are noticeable is Heshbon. Remember, that's where King Sihon's throne was. Okay. Now they got the river Arnon is on that south side. That's that they cross into this after they left Moab. And remember, we'll go back to this map here. Here's Moab. This had been northern Moab once upon a time. And Ammon up here had been western Ammon. And this King Sihon had come down and had taken western Ammon from the Ammonites and western Moab from the Moabites. Remember the word the Lord was that God would not give so much as a footbreadth of the inheritance of the Moabites and Ammonites to the children of Israel. Well, they had signed treaties and gave that land to these Amorites, so it really was no longer theirs at that point. So that's what it's referring to, and this part here about the city and the river, there's an eye in the middle of it, and that is counted. That was counted not as part of the Amorites, the Moabites. That was part of the Amorites. They built a little fortress out there in the river to reinforce the border, as it were. Okay, so now, they got this part that's going from this river northward that I was showing you. Now, in Beth Peor, we continue on Beth Peor, in Ashdoth Pisgah, in Beth Yeshimot, and all the cities of the plain, and all the kingdom of Sihon, king of the Amorites, which reigned in Heshbon, whom Moses smote with the prince of Midian, Evi, Rekem, Zur, Hur, and Reba, which were dukes of Sihon, dwelling in the country. And Balaam also, the son of Beor, the soothsayer, to the children of Israel, slave of the sword among them that were slain by them. And the border of the children of Reuben was Jordan, and the border thereof. This was the inheritance of the children of Reuben after their families and their cities and their villages thereof. Okay, reminding you, this is Heshbon. These princes of Midian, they were dukes of Sihon. They had been sons of these 5 Midianite kings we saw when we were looking in the Acts of Moses, who were in cahoots with this. Were allies of King Sihon, and when the Israelites when they tried to pass the land peacefully, and Sihon attacked them, these guys got killed also, which led to a fight with the Midianites, and God took revenge, had them totally destroy those 5 Midianite kings and their kingdoms. Okay, and remember these kings we're talking about. Don't think King of England, King of France, Russia czar. Think, these are petty kingdoms. Think like St. Patrick's Day. I mean, St. Patrick, in his day, he said when he went to Ireland, there's 120 kings in Ireland. Each one was really just over a walled city and the land around it, roughly halfway between it and the next walled city. So that's what we're thinking about. Think about these as towns that maybe these cities maybe have 4,000 people. Well, we saw AI had 12,000. Okay, but something bigger than that was considered like a rural city and large. Okay, so don't be thinking again London, Paris, or something. In those type size cities, in these type in those in kings of that type of reign, very small. They're really just reigns over. There's a bunch of city states, and their reigns are what would be called petty kingdoms in European history. So these kingdoms got destroyed as well, but they didn't go and take any of that land because God would not give them so much of a foot of the land of Midian of the Midianites as well. That was outside the boundaries of the promised land. So so this is so they got this, and notice up to the Jordan River. And this map here is pretty decent as far as Reuben goes. You can see right here that the Jordan River, it kind of goes just a little bit above the Dead Sea in the Jordan River. They have a little access to the river where it flows in. It's already pretty salty. That's why the Dead Sea's salty. And there's the Arnon River. And again, so this part here, they pretty much took over what had been northern Moab. The Moabites had given away in a loss in a war, and given by treaty to Sihon, the king of the Amorites. And they got the southern part of his kingdom. Now we're going to go read about the next tribe, the next people who again, remember Joshua's being reminded they already got land. Here's where it is, and make sure they get it. And here's what we read in Joshua 13 verses 24 through 28. And Moses gave inheritance to the tribe of Gad, even to the children of Gad according to their families. And their coast was Yazir, in all the cities of Gilead, half the land of the children of Ammon, under Aurora, there we go, which is before Rabbah, and from Heshbon to Ramoth Mizpah, and from Betanim, and from Machanim to the border of Debur, and from the valley, Beth Aram and Beth Nimrah, Sukkot and Zaphon, the rest of the kingdom of King Sihon of Heshbon. Jordan is bordered even to the edge of the sea of Kinnereth on the other side of on the other side Jordan eastward. For this is the inheritance of Gad after their families, their children, their villages. Okay. The other side from where Joshua is means the east side. Okay. So even up to the edge there, and he's got a little funky shaped inheritance here, as it were. So he's got the cities of Gilead on the eastern side. Remember, there's Gilead is part of Gilead's on the east of the Jordan River, and parts on the west. Well, eastern Gilead, they got all of that. Half the land of the children of Ammon, because that's what the Sihon had taken from the Ammonites. Okay, he took western Ammon from them. That's why it's referred to that. Before, okay, and so you see these cities here, and this is what he had. Now notice the Sea of Kinnereth on the other side of Jordan eastward. So there's this little to the edge. So let's just get this little edge going up along the Jordan River. That's theirs all the way to the bottom of the Sea of Galilee. Kinnereth means harp. It's because when it's full, it's shaped like a harp. So the Hebrew word is harp. It's also called the Sea of Tiberias in Scripture, and the Sea of Galilee. And there's one more name. So now they got this here, and this here is probably exaggerated how wide it is right here in this map, but perhaps just to make it easier to draw. And this here's too. What's not known is where some of these other cities are. that belong in Manasseh. We'll talk about them next. But note it. But here's the principle to remember: God's He's going to divide this land proportional to the size of the tribe. We took the numbers when he had these all the tribes numbered in Numbers 26. Okay, and the idea was every man would end up with a roughly same size piece of property when it was all said and done. They took possession of everything because the land would be divided into tribes by their families and down to the man, so on and so forth. Now Manasseh is going to get a double portion, and so arguably maybe every member of them got twice as much. But fact is, some of these cities we don't really know. I think this one here. Well, remember all the cities of Gilead. We just read this, so that would include this one here as well. So it really should go up along here, and again up this way, and perhaps it even kind of cut a little diagonal that way. And what's interesting about that is because I've seen maps that have Manasseh and East Manasseh, West and East Manasseh across the river from each other, but they're not. They said it's even possible it goes across this way. And Manasseh's got this large area up here. So Reuben's size is pretty well established. These places are known, Heshbon and stuff today. I mean, also we got this little description of this river, and barely up north here where it dumps into the sea. All right, so we got a pretty well description of this. Bees are noticed, and these red ones are the cities of refuge, and Beezer's got a little even a question mark by it. We don't know quite how far west it went, but this is probably fairly well here established. But this here, all the cities of Gilead would include Jabesh Gilead, Gilead, Gilead. Really, is how you say it. Gilead. Okay, so it's probably its map should go perhaps like that. But the point is, Gad should have roughly, when it's all said and done, the same amount of land as Reuben. If I remember right, Gad had a little bit Gad had a little bit more. There's a few more people in Gad than there were Reuben, but there's roughly 40% of those on the east were Reuben, 40% were Gad, and 20% were Manasseh. To give you kind of an ideal. So this is kind of the ideal of where the land where Gavin where sorry the inheritance of Gad is. Now we're gonna go and look at our next one, and we're gonna look at the half tribe of Manasseh on the west side of the promise of the on the east side of the Jordan River as well. And it's just notice we're just dividing the land that Moses conquered, not all the land that was as the land of the Canaanites, that's mentioned. And remember, we showed before that the land of the promised land to Abraham and the promised land to Jacob were not the same. Jacob's was a subset of the promised land of Abraham. Promised land of Abraham also included what Ishmael got and the children of Lot and the Edomites, which is why Israel can't take that land. Jacob was promised the land of Canaan, and all these others are outside the land of Canaan, of course. So as a reminder. Now let's go read about this other half tribe of Manasseh and see what we can read about about it. And Moses gave inheritance to half the tribe of Manasseh that was possessed of the half tribe of the children of Manasseh by their families. And their coast was from Machanim, all Bashan, all the kingdom of Og, king of Bashan, all the towns of Yair, or Jair if you prefer, which are in Bashan, 60 cities, half Gilead, Ashtaroth, cities of the kingdom of Og and Bashan, were pertaining to the children of Machir, the son of Manasseh, even to half the children of Machir by their families. Okay, so as we see here, now we mentioned here all the cities of Gilead belong to Gad, but not all the land of Gilead on the east side. Half the land of Gilead belonged to Manasseh. It's going to be farmland, whatever. Okay. So, and now Machanim here is the southern border, kind of mark helps us mark the southern border between these two. Ashtaroth and Edrei, these are all up north, by the way. And so we can go and look now at their possession. So notice Gabad, Gabesh, Gilead is a city of Gilead would belong to Gad. So this map here is a little inaccurate. Again, as I said, should go across here, or might even, well, I don't think it could go across that way. Half of Gilead belongs to them, so perhaps it goes along to here and then up this way. Okay. Now notice Machanaim is not known. Question mark. And it's probably not on the Yarvik River here. The Yarvik River, Javik, if you want to, go with the English spelling here. Yarvik River. Nowhere does it say it's on the Yarvik River. It's up here somewhere. Okay, and so up here somewhere. Obviously above this line here. Notice how they both got Gilead in their name. It says that Gilead belong. Half of Gilead. Along here somewhere is where Machanim would have been, based on the text we've just read. Now, so again, we see they get this northern area and also how wide out this way, again, not known. And we've read about, we looked at before about how it kind of comes down by the Sea of Galilee and cuts over like that. So this part here is perhaps not also not part. Here's Bashan, and Bashan's city's later named Dan. It's also Caesarea Philippi, same location, same area. All right, so they got this area here, perhaps a little narrower here. Here's Golan, and along this way, the Golan Heights, the day that you hear one talk about, that Hezbollah had planned to take over and then just froze and didn't. It was a intervention of God. I mean, Israel was weak and was dealing with a mosque. They could have ran in there and caused great more damage than they did down in Gaza, but they didn't do so. So again, this map here shows a little bit too much territory, perhaps too much territory. But remember, the proportions given in the Bible give us the idea: almost 40% to Gad, almost 40% to Reuben, a little over about 20% to Manasseh, or maybe you can think maybe a little more accurately. 3 parts here, 3 parts here, and 2 parts there. Might be a little closer to portions, but you get the idea that these maps are often exaggerated out here. They don't know where the boundaries were, but they don't. But the scripture tells us proportionally how big they were, so we got an idea. Now we continue on. Wrap up Joshua 13, 32 through 33 at these words. These are the countries which Moses distributed to the inheritance of the plains of Moab, the other side of Jordan by Jericho, eastward. Unto the tribe of Levi, Moses left not the inheritance. The Lord God of Israel was their inheritance, as he said unto them. Okay, so again, their inheritance before was the sacrifice. Now it's God. They're gonna have somewhere to live, obviously. They take up physical space, got somewhere physically to live, but it's referring to breaking the land like they did in America, allotments of 160 acres back in the day when people would stake their claim and settle it. So they're not getting an allotment; they're going to have to live in a city somewhere, which we looked at we looked at in detail the inheritance of Levi when we was talking about the acts of Moses. And you want to know more specific details, you can go to that lesson and find them. But the main point is they're not getting any kind of farmland in all these places. Now, we continue on in Joshua 11, 50 through 15, and we read the following. the Lord commanded Moses' servant, as the Lord commanded Moses' servant, so did Moses command Joshua, and so did Joshua. He left nothing undone of all the Lord commanded him. So Yeshua took all the land, the hills, and all the south country, all the land of Goshen, the valley, the plain, the mountain of Israel, the valley of the same, from even from Mount Halak unto Mount up to Seir, that goes up to Seir, even unto Baal, Baal Gad in the valley of Lebanon under Mount Hermon. All their kings he took, smote them, and slew them. And Joshua made a long time war with those kings. Okay, now we're this is what we this is a little refresher from our last lesson, and that goes up to, so it's talking about this mountain goes up to Seir. He didn't go to Mount Seir. He didn't go in there and take over the land, the land of the Edomites, their kingdom, and this being their capital. It's just saying this mountain goes toward, you're going up towards there. So this mountain's on the border, as it were, of the land of Edom, or perhaps across. Well, no, it's a wadi south of the. It's just a dried riverbed there at the south of the Dead Sea. But this mountain, as you're going towards, it's going towards there. It's on the border of Edom's the main point here, and all the way up to Lebanon. So again, our picture here. Oh, whoops. From minus, he took this little strip from here. Here's Edom. Here's a lock as you're going up towards, Seir, which isn't on this map. It's down here. Okay, there's Bosran down here, roughly where my mouse is. The Sierra. Okay, as you're going up towards it, up in elevation. Here's the mountain. Here's Halak, and he took that, and he took this little strip, like I said, all the way up here, way up here towards Lebanon. I wouldn't. Okay, so up here, up here somewhere, up to perhaps this point around here. He took this little strip, but the trouble is, they're not living in that little strip. The whole army's moving around and keeps coming back down here. Okay, coming back down this area of Ephraim, where it says now around the area of Ephraim here, perhaps, or Benjamin, down this area where Gilgal is. Well, there's Jericho, and it's right across from Jericho, so it's right around this area here. Now, let's continue on with the text here. So that's what happened, but notice a long war, and we're going to look at how long this war is now. We're going to look in Joshua 14, verses 1 through 5, to start getting us cluing us in on how long this war is. Now, these are the countries that the children of Israel inherit in the land of Canaan, which Eleazar the priest and Joshua the son of Nun, the heads of the fathers of the tribes of Israel, distributed for inheritance to them. By lot was their inheritance, the Lord commanded by the hand of Moses, for the 9 tribes and a half tribe. For Moses had given inheritance 2 tribes and a half on the other side of Jordan. But to the Levites he gave none inheritance among them. For the children of Joseph were 2 tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim, and from them was no part. They gave no part to the inheritance to the Levites in the land, save cities to dwell in, with their suburbs for their cattle and for their substance. As the Lord commanded Moses, so the children of Josh of Israel did, and they divided the land. Okay, so what we have here is a little recap, sort of a recap here with as well, and they're to divide these 9 tribes, 2.5. So notice there's 12 tribes. Well, how do you get 12? Because we're not counting Levites; they're not going to be part. Because Joseph's going to count as 2 tribes, and this is sometimes you have to look at the context. I mean, it'll even sometimes refer to the tribe of Joseph, and when it does, it may refer to one of these 2 tribes, but not both. And then it's referred to the tribe that's not referred to. Sometimes it refer to either tribe, It's referring to them combined together as one tribe, okay, the children of Joseph, all right? And often it's often like in this case here, it it varies like that. So the text will end up with not with 12 tribes in general. So because what you have here is 9.5 plus 2.5 is 12. Well, how do you get your 12 tribes? Jacob had 12 sons, Levi being one of them, and they're not getting a part. Remember, he said to count Joseph's sons, he'd count as his own children. He was in Egypt, and he crossed his hands and said that gave the double portion of inheritance to the younger son. But later we found when he blessed the tribes before he died that the right between of Joseph's sons inside the family of Joseph, Ephraim would retain, who was the older, would retain the right to rule. Okay. All right. So, and indeed, when the kingdom split, in the northern kingdom, Ephraim is where the throne was, and the land was land, and the kingdom was largely from these two tribes in the northern kingdom. This one being the most prosperous one, the double portion. This one being the ruler of that northern kingdom. So this is why this is why. But the Levites, notice, they got cities to dwell in, and their suburbs. When we talked to don't think of suburbs, don't think of little towns around there. It spells out it's a green zone around these walled cities. It goes out about a kilometer or 5/8 of a mile all around it. Okay, and that's for their livestock. When you see cattle in King James, think livestock. If it's actually means cows, they'll say cows or beeves or something like that. But so their livestock has to have place to graze. So you can't just go to the store and get milk like we do. You have to have a milk goat or milk cow has to have somewhere to graze, and you have to go milk it. Okay, they need some place for their substance and their animals. All right, so they got a little bit of land around there, and that's it though. They don't really have any. And it's communal farmland, by the way. It's like a common used to be in America, like Boston Common, except which wasn't uncommon way back when to have some land in the middle of town. Again, for people to raise milk cows and whatever on, some sort of arrangement where basically you you had to give some of the milk in exchange for letting your cows graze there or whatever. But the same sort of thing there. So now, so the children of Israel, they divide the land. They're going to divide this land even though they don't have possession of most of it. But they're going to divide the western promised land just as they had already divided the eastern promised land. Now we continue on Joshua 14, verses 6 through 10. Then the children of Judah came into Joshua in Gilgal, and Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, said to them, "You know the thing that the Lord said to Moses, the man of God, concerning me and you in Kadesh Barnea. 40 years old was I when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land, and I brought him word again what was as was in my heart. Nonetheless, my brethren went up and that went up with me made the heart of the people melt. But I wholly followed the Lord my God. And Moses swore that day, saying, Surely the land where your feet have trodden shall be your inheritance, your children's forever, because you have wholly followed the Lord your God. Now behold, the children of Israel, the Lord has kept me alive, as he said, these 45 years, ever since the Lord spake this word unto Moses. While the children of Israel wandered in the wilderness, and lo, I am this day 65 years. Okay, so we're going to do a little math here. He's 85. All right, he was 40 years old, he said, and he's 40. He's 45 years. Okay, so the Lord kept him alive 45 years since when they sent the spies into the land. And remember, the 40 years they'd already the 40-year countdown that started when they crossed the Red Sea. We'd seen, and there's 38 years of wandering, maybe even a little bit less, because it took them a little bit of time from when the wandering ended to get where they could cross into the Promised Land. So It could be argued maybe even 37 years, but nonetheless, 38 years have passed, and now 45 minus 38 is 7 years. Now, Joshua, that before that long war, the thing was all those because of Gilead coming to them. I mean, I'm sorry, Gibeon, the Gibeonites coming to them and making it and tricking them and making this peace treaty. It's sort of a series of events, or a bunch of the neighbors, the bunch of their Canaanites who had already planned to work together to destroy Israel off the face of the earth, then attacked the Gibeonites. Joshua came to deliver them. He was saving Gibeon as he promised, and then he went and fought their allies, and there were other kings who came in against him. And what happened was 31 kings in these city states came in a short amount of time, and Joshua didn't have to go to them and take the army to them for the most part. They all ganged up together, and they made Joshua's job a lot easier in the long run. So as a result of that, in about 6 months' time, they took about half of the land that they would come to possess, that they would come to, uh, of half the people that they destroyed in the land that they destroyed under Joshua. They destroyed in this 6 months, and then it took 6.5 years to do the rest. And the reason is, well, they weren't all coming to Joshua to be destroyed like that before. He had to go to them. Also, they're going to have to settle down some and plant crops in the fall and wait to at least and get some harvesting until the people of Israel, so they have food, so they go fight, at the end of spring towards summer. Okay, again, they're gonna have to, they're gonna have this process going on where they got to spend some of their time fighting, as farming, as it were. Perhaps in the winter they could have marched against some people too as well. But it's pretty hot. The ancient world generally came to a standstill in the winter because of the difficulty of travel. But no one would be expecting them. So perhaps they may have fought in the winter too as well, while while the crops were germinating underground and hadn't yet came up and hadn't needed tending. But they have to deal with now. They had great success at the beginning, but now they got to maintain what they've got and actually keep possession. While these other places they go, they're not really able to stay there and take possession like they were in this original area. And see, there's something there. There's something there for us today, because in our lives sometimes God will give us great success quickly. I mean, it'll astonish us, and it'll slow down, and people will be like, "Hey, what I do wrong? What I do wrong was, I mean, it was just coming to me like that, like that, like that, and it just slowed down, stopped. It seemed like it stopped, but no, it didn't stop. They had to make a lot more effort to get the same results, because originally God was giving them all success to build them a base of operations so they could expand from there. Expand from there, but they had to learn how to maintain what they had before expansion, so they could every time they expanded, they could keep what they had, and they really did not. They really were not able to do that under this mode they were with Joshua in a large part, and that'll become more apparent as we get into the text. Okay, that even though even places they took over those places they left, and they destroyed everyone they left. Everyone moved in some cases. So maintenance is very important in anything in life. You can't just go along and have growth, and just grow, and without doing any kind of maintenance. And in business all the time collapse because of this. They experience tremendous growth at the beginning, and then they overextend their credit and whatever else, trying to keep the growth going, and they don't build a solid business of what they've grown. One that will weather the storm, as the saying go, as the figure of speech goes in American business. And then when and then suddenly, and when things don't go well, the whole thing collapses on them. Well, God's not wanting that to happen. So these not so that tremendous quick success was just to get them in a good position so they could have a base of operations to continue to take the promise, continue in this long term plan for possessing the promised land. And we'll talk about how long in a future lesson. They'll become plain, okay? But so now here, now we know when Caleb the land's divided. We've had our time we've been keeping track of ever since we started with our first series before the patriarchs with Adam. And we can see here. Here's the exodus from Egypt. Here's where the wandering began. Okay, and 45 years later is when Caleb's making this plea for this plea to say, hey, remember God said I could have this part. I have this possession of the promised land. As you can see, there's a 7 year difference between the two. Okay, so and we'll talk in greater detail about Caleb in a future lesson entirely on him. There's a lot more there that I could talk about, but we'll just resume that in a future lesson. And this is 2560 since Adam was formed out of the dust. 2,560 years have passed, and that puts us roughly at around 1440 BC, roughly. Okay. Now we're going to continue on, and we're going to continue on with we're going to text our next chapter. In chapter 15, verses 1 through 4, we read the following. Then was the lot of the children of Judah by their families, even to the border of Edom, the mountain of the wilderness of Zin. Southward was the uttermost part of the south coast, and their south border was from the shore of the sea of the salt sea, from the bay that looked southward, and it went to the south side of Mahala Krabim. Yeah, Ma'alia HaKrabim. There we go. Mahalia Krabim, and passed along to Zan, and descended up to the south side of Kadesh Barnea, and went along to Hezron, and went up to Hadar, and fetched compass at Karka, ah, Karka. And it came to pass towards Asmon, and went out to the river of Egypt, and the going out of the seas with the coast with the sea, and there shall be your south coast. Okay, here's this brook of Egypt. It's a Y today. It basically Israel, the Sinai Peninsula, perhaps begins over here. The misnamed, Sinai Peninsula we've discussed many times. Okay, belongs over here. It's the river. It's not talking about the Nile River in this case. Okay, so the possession goes down to here. It's the it's the border of Egypt, as it were. That's why it's referred to as the Brook of Egypt. Now, back here to our allotments here. This is the south coast, okay? This is the south coast. It kind of has it shaped pretty well here, okay? Notice again, question mark here, question mark there on Tamar. Don't know where some of these places are, but it's in Edom. All right, so Kadesh Barnea, that's fairly well established today. And remember, modern Israel goes way down south there, and that land actually belonged to Edom according to the Bible, to the Edomites. So here, here's the border way north, a little bit north of northern of north of where it is in modern Israel by quite a bit, really. So this is what this is the south border, and the west border, as it mentions, is the Mediterranean Sea. The shore of the Salt Sea, that of course that's here the Dead Sea. It's also referred to as the Salt Sea. So it kind of goes along this way as it shows, looping around. We know where Kadesh Barnea is, so it kind of does this business as it shows and gets to the brook and then just go. That's the border between it and Egypt. And That's all good there. But what about the other borders of it? Well, let's read about it. In Joshua 15 verses 5 through 8, read the following. And the east border was the Salt Sea, even to the end of the Jordan. And their border was on the north quarter, from the bay of the sea to the othermost part of Jordan. And the border went up from Beth Hagla and passed to the north border of Beth Araba. And the border went from the stone of Bohan, the son of Reuben. And the border went up towards Debur from the valley of Achor, so northward, looking towards Gilgal. I'm sorry, looking towards Gilgal is before the going up to Adumim. Okay, there we go. Adumim, which is on the south side of the river. And the border passed towards the waters of En Shemesh, and the going out there was in Rogel. And the border went up from the valley of the son of Hinnon to the south side of the Jebusite, the same as Jerusalem. And the border went up from the top of the mountain that lies for the valley of Hinnon westward, which is at the end of the valley of the giants northward. Okay, so we're going to drag our other map here. All right, we'll go with this one first. Here's Jebus. Here's the Valley of the Giants, the end of it. Okay. It runs this direction. Jezreel Valley running this. All right, runs this direction. Yeah, it runs this direction. All right, 185-mile long valley. And kind of terminates here at Jerusalem. Kind of cuts through here. Here's perhaps the river they're referring to. Okay. Now, and here's perhaps one that shows the borders. That wasn't actually bad, was it? No. And now here's and notice this one here shows the Philistia going here, and there they are. Okay. There they are. 4 of the 5 cities shown there. So this is roughly it. And notice it's kind of twisty and winds. We'll look at some more about that because you get to this Beth Shemesh, and notice to the south side of Javis, they don't actually own Javis. Javis is a border town, or Jerusalem's a border town between them and well, whoever gets it by lot later, which we'll find out will be Benjamin, of course, for this map, but kind of goes this way and perhaps down this way along the river here, the Jabesh Shemesh. It's probably maybe doesn't really go on that side of the river because it says very plainly Jabesh Shemesh on the south side of the river. Now let's continue on with the boundaries of Jordan. I mean of Judah. And the eastmost border was the Salt Sea, even to the end of Jordan. And their border was in the north quarters from the bay of the sea into the utmost part of Jordan. And the border went up from Beth Haglah and passed by the north to Beth Araba. And the border went from the stone. Oh, wait, I just read that part. I'm sorry. Right here is that stone of Bohan. Just remember, just a little. It does have a little piece of the Jordan River, and his stones there, boundary stone marking that. So that's was a well-known landmark at the time. Well, we're going to continue on here. The rest of the with the rest of the border, and the border is drawn from the top of the hill to the fountain of of Nephtoah, and out of the cities of Mount Ephraim, and the border was drawn in And the border was drawn to Baalah, which is Kirjath Jearim. And the border compass from the and the border compass from Bethlah from Bethlah westward to Mount Seir unto Mount Seir, and passed along the south side of Mount Jearim, which is Kezalan on the north side, and went down to Beth Shemesh and passed on to Timnah. And the border went to the side of Ekron northward, and the border was drawn to Shikron, and passed along to Mount Baalah, and went Baalah, which went to Jebna, and going out of the borders at the sea. And the west border is the great sea, the coast thereof. This is the coast of the children of Israel, round about according to their families. Okay, so this is the border, and they're the largest tribe by number, by the way. Okay, they have about 75,000, and actually Manasseh had 52,000. I'm sorry, 52,000. Right. Reuben and Gad both had a little under 40,000. They had 26,000 on each side over here. So again, three, and two be more proportional like that. Two sevens, and three sevens. No, three eights, and two eights belong to them roughly. Anyway, so which is a quarter. So they got this land here, and it's got this again funky shape here. All right, and what we're not what there's Ajalon here, which is shown, Jebna, and what's not shown, which is actually fairly important to all this, to all of this discussion, was, well, Timnah's fairly important, we'll see, and also Kirjath Jearim is also important, but it's got another name. We'll talk about it more when we talk about Caleb, because the trouble is it has multiple names, so it's sometimes they only put one on the map, so it's a little hard for you to see which one it is. So kind of gives you an ideal of there. And that's this map's fairly accurate. The only thing is maybe it goes a little south of this river, would appear to be from the text, but it definitely goes south of Javis. Javis is actually in what will be the territory of Benjamin, or Jerusalem. So that's the boundaries of Judah. And notice they're pretty well. They're a little wordy, somewhat well defined, and you don't see Judah really getting other people's boundary, going over their boundaries. You the side of Ekron, well, that's one of the Philistine cities, except okay, but all this is, you don't see them. It's very defined, and they're staying inside the cities of Mount Ephron. All right, at Mount Ephron. So you got these cities there of Mount Ephron, which I don't think it shows in your map. But along here, okay, you got these cities along here, okay, and it's like again fairly well defined, and the borders are there, and Judah is staying inside their own lane, as it were, staying inside their own borders. But now we're going to look at the tribes. Now we're going to look at the land, the boundaries of Judah, the land or the boundaries of the rest of the children of Joshua next. And remember, Caleb is from the tribe of Judah. We'll go over this again in a future lesson. Joshua is from the tribe of Ephraim. But notice this theme recurs here. It's a little bit of details given to us. As for the Jebusites, they have its Jerusalem. The children of Judah could not drive them out. But the Jebusites dwell with the children of Judah at Jerusalem unto this day. Well, remember, Javis is got we've shown before is actually in the side of the inheritance of Benjamin. We'll say in a future lesson again. But they had the land right up to the suburb of it, right up to the farm, right all the way up to like a kilometer or 5/8 of a mile from the wall belonged to Judah. And these Jebusites are a constant problem for them. And they cannot drive them out. And notice under this day when this thing's compiled, the problem is still there. It didn't go away. And we'll look at a future lesson why it didn't go away, why it was allowed to stay for at least temporarily, and why it didn't go away at all. So, and this is perhaps a little lesson for us here. Just because God gives you possession of something doesn't mean there's no problems. And just because you don't get rid of the problem quickly doesn't mean that God somehow has abandoned you and you has somehow abandoned you and or you failed God or something of that nature. It may have been left in your life for a reason, and we'll look at those again in a future lesson. But there's also, it's not meant to be there permanently, and you have to deal with it eventually. If you don't, it's going to be like this problem is still plaguing them 500, 600 years later, okay, when this is written. God never promised to resolve, fix every problem for you without you having to do anything. And he never promised when you did take action, every problem would be solved quickly. The problems themselves serve a purpose. And we'll look at that again in a future lesson in greater detail. Now, in Joshua 16, verse 1 through 4, we read the following. The lot of the children of Joseph fell from Jordan to Jericho, under the water of Jericho in the east, and in the wilderness that goes up from Jericho, it goes up from Jericho to Mount Bethel, that goes from Bethel to Luz, that passes along the borders to the borders of Arki to Atarot, and went down and went and go that goes down westward to the coast of Japhleti, and to the coast of Beth Horon, the Nether, and to Gezer, and to the going outs there of the sea. So the children of Joseph, Manasseh and Ephraim, took their inheritance. Okay, so next now we're gonna look at what their inheritance is. And remember, the people. This is all near or in the area. This is in that area where they actually have taken. They're actually permanently settled. Permanently settled. I'm going to say it that way. They've taken possession of these other places, but they're not permanently settled. They're not in a position to maintain them. Now become more apparent as the text comes out. Okay. So, so, and notice the nether meaning the lower. Okay, there's two of them. We saw a Sierra there. Well, a Sierra there in Judah a moment ago. Mount Sierra. It's not talking about the capital of Edom. It was a mountain. It was a mountain in this. Or the allotment one's probably better. It was a mountain, in this area here. Okay, not the Sierra that's way down here. That wouldn't even make any sense. The description of the northern border. The northern border. It's up by Jerusalem. So now there's allotments. It gives us just a general feeling. And again, some of these things are we can show quite well are not quite accurate here. Okay, eventually, and we'll explain the confusion as well. But basically, kind of like you got here, kind of like here and here. That's theirs collectively, not counting what they got over here. So now that's them collectively. Now we're going to look at Ephraim. Start with Ephraim first and see what Ephraim's allotment was. And remember, Joshua Joshua's from Ephraim. And the border of the children of Ephraim, In Joshua 16, verses 15 through 18, 15, 5 through 8, read the following. And the border of the children of Ephraim, according to their families, was thus. Even the border of their inheritance on the east side was Ataroth Adar, and from unto Beth Horon the upper. And the border went out from the sea of Mechalethah on the north side of Mecmetha. There we go, Mecmetha on the north side. And the border went out to Taanath Shiloh, and passed on the border of Yahanath, Yahona, Yanoha. There we go, Yanoha. It went down from Yanoha to Atarot and to Naharat, and came to Jericho, or Jericho. Went out at Jordan. The border went out from west from Tapua. I'm sorry, Tapua, westward to the river Kana. And the goings out there were at the sea. This inherits the children of Ephraim by their families. Okay, the going out of the river went to the sea, not their border went to the sea. All right, just a little clarification here. And we can sort of see this allotment here. Tapua is mentioned in particular. There's Shechem, and they did indeed get Shechem, and that's important. We'll see why later. But so they got all the way from this low that lower Beth Horon. No, they got the upper one. Okay, meaning an elevation, and you kind of got this area here. Here's Jericho. Here's Gilead, and they got this area along here, and it's perhaps a little hard to see the color difference there, and that may be on purpose for the makers of the map. But they got along in here as well to the Jordan River, and it just sort of went like that, and then along this river and then over this river. And I think perhaps another place Lode's mentioned, and we don't really know that it was all this squarish like it shows here. Um, Through Mount Bethel to loses Lode. So it's perhaps it went up this way a little bit more, giving Dan a little bit bigger chunk, but maybe not. Remember, it's going to be proportional according to the numbers that were numbered of each tribe in Numbers 26. So, but it gives you kind of a rough idea. Okay, that's their point. Everything looks pretty well. The boundaries are defined, but there's going to be a problem, and we're going to look at that here in a moment. The problem is not the giving the boundaries, but them respecting those boundaries. And here's what we read. Joshua 16, verses 9 through 10. And the separate cities for the children of Ephraim were among the inheritance of the children of Manasseh, all the cities within with their villages. They drove not out the Canaanites that dwelt in Gezer. And the Canaanites dwell among the Ephraimims to this day and serve under tribute. Okay, that recurring theme of not getting rid of the trouble. And notice, in this case, they have come to live with a problem. They've seen it. Well, how can we profit from this problem? They've taken a different tact, and that's going to cause them a lot of problems. We're going to look at that in a future lesson, because they're just not the only ones that do this. This thing spreads out. But notice what else they do. Why is they separate cities? Because they're separate from the land. They went, instead of dealing with the problems in their own land, they went somewhere where it seemed easier and settled in the cities of another tribe. They didn't respect the boundaries and stay in their and take care of their own problems. Instead, they went into someone else's boundary, someone else's inheritance to be there instead. And and this is not what God wants to do. He wants to respect the boundaries he's placed in our lives and other people's, and say, "This is mine, that's yours," and not be, "Well, I'm having a tough time with mine. I'm gonna go take some of theirs," which is exactly what Ephraim did with the inheritance of the children of Manasseh. Those cities were among the inheritance of the children of Manasseh, but they went in them separate from the rest of their land and started dwelling in them. Started taking the cities over, as it were, moving into them, rather than deal with a problem in their own land. And and getting rid of the problem. God never, God never promised we wouldn't have problems, just that we had overcome them in time in His time with His help. But they didn't overcome the problem. They decided to live with it instead. Figure out how they get along, how they could help them, how they get the most benefit from it instead of getting rid of it, and how they could make their lives easier by taking someone else's thing instead. But they're not the only ones who did this. This mentality is going to spread. Judah has stayed inside its own borders, even though it has issues. Also, it didn't try to solve the problem by taking someone else's stuff that they thought was easier, going where someone else's line of business, whatever it was. Now Manasseh had the land of Tupah, but the Tupah was on the border of Manasseh, belonged to the children of Ephraim. The coast ascended into the river Kana. Southward of the river, the cities of Ephraim were among the cities of Manasseh. The coast of Manasseh was also on the north side of the river, and the going out there were of the sea. Southward it was Ephraim's, northward it was Manasseh's, and the sea is his border. They met together at Asher in the north and Issachar in the east. And Manasseh had Issachar in Issachar and Asher, Beth Shean and her towns, Ibleam and her towns, the inhabitants of Dor and her towns, the inhabitants of Endor and her towns, inhabitants of Taanach and her towns, inhabitants of Megiddo and her towns, even 3 countries. Okay, so what it's saying is, just here is this land here, the river here is kind of marking it's supposed to. Well, this land, Ephraim's in the city, but this land, which should be theirs, Manasseh's taking possession of it. Just as people in Ephraim didn't respect the border, didn't respect the boundaries, and went and lived in some of their cities where they're occupying some of their farmland. But then they go up here. This here is saying it should belong to Issachar. Dor here should belong to Asher. So Asher should be coming way down here, okay? And they're going and living in these cities as well. They're doing unto others has been done unto them. So they don't, despite this map, they don't really own all this up here. Issachar kind of owns over to here a ways. Asher down here to Dor. Okay, that's what it says. Okay, Issachar perhaps he goes over to the sea as well. Okay, all this area up here somewhere from Megiddo's mentioned. They don't own it, but they're occupying it nonetheless. It wasn't, remember they cast lots according to the commandment of Moses. It wasn't in their allotment, but they are going to take they decide they're going to take it anyways. When you read countries here, don't think of like United States. Think more like counties in the U.S. Subdivisions of a state. Okay, they're taking so that means they're not taking just the towns. They're taking the land around it as well, as I mentioned. But it's not theirs. It belongs to Issachar and Asher, or is supposed to. All right, let's continue on here. In Joshua 17, verses 12 through 14 of the following. Yet the children of Manasseh could not drive out the inhabitants of those cities, but the Canaanites would dwell in that land. Yet it came to pass the children of Israel waxed strong. They put the children of the Canaanites under tribute, and but did not utterly drive them out. The children of Joseph spoke to Joshua, saying, "Why have you given me but one lot, one portion here? And tonight I am a great people, as much the Lord has blessed me hitherto." Okay, well, we just read where they got two lots, two portions. Okay, but it's counted as one, but it's really large because it said that lot of Joseph, children of Joseph, and it's really large area. But they haven't driven out. The Ephraim moved into some of the cities of Manasseh because they, rather than getting rid of the Canaanites out of their land, dealing with their problem, they went where it was more comfortable from someone else, and even got comfortable with their problem. Well, the Manassans have done the same thing, and they went to these other cities, but notice they didn't drive even these other cities that were Canaanite cities. They didn't drive them out. They let them continue in the land. They there were problems, which is perhaps why Issachar and Asher hadn't taken possession of these things, hadn't gotten there, and they were willing to just live with the problem, and even say, well, hey, maybe we can even profit from this problem instead of getting rid of the problem the way God said. And remember, God didn't get rid of the problem for them. The Melechite went through and did what they couldn't do. They're supposed to go through behind and do what they can do. And he left some of these things on purpose, at least in the short term, for reasons we'll look at in the future lesson. But now they're whining. They're whining about what they've been given. Because the truth is, even though they got this allotment, this giant allotment here, okay, remember, just pretend it goes over here for Issachar and Asher, right? Okay. All right. Maybe, all right, kind of goes this way for Asher. Issachar's here, and Issachar goes across, certainly as Megiddo, goes across over this way as well. Perhaps it's supposed to go to the coast, I'm not sure. We'll see that next week. But this big area here, plus Ephraim. But the truth is, what they're actually in right now is down here. There's Jericho, here's Gilgal. They are only really in control about this much of it. The two tribes together at most. And they're kind of packed in. And so they're complaining, hey, there's a bunch of us, and we own that on paper, but what we really have in possession is very small. And they're basically whining. And we know how God feels about whining as we went to the Acts of Moses. He's not sympathetic to you when you whine. It ticks him off, okay? And we're going to look at how Joshua treats their whining now. Joshua 17, verse 15 through 18 are the following. And Joshua answered them and said, if you be a great people, then you shall go up, then get you up into the wood country and cut down for yourselves there in the land of the Perizzites and of the giants, if Mount Ephraim be too narrow for you. And the children of Joseph said, the hill is not enough for us. All the Canaanites dwell in the land of the valley have chariots of iron, both they of Beth Shean and her towns, and they of the valley of Jezreel. And Joshua spoke to the children of Joseph, even to Ephraim and Manasseh, saying, you are a great people and has great power. Shall I have one lot only? But the mountain shall be yours for his wood, and you shall cut it down. The going out shall be yours. For you shall drive out the Canaanites, so they have iron chariots, and they be strong. In the land of the giants. Remember the giants, the last of the giants, Og, but the descendants of the giants, half giant. The giants we saw from Genesis 6, verse 1 through 4. before and after the flood, angels married human women and produced these giants, and then the giants had sons. There's kind of a whittling down in size that's going on from generation to generation, but their descendants are still there. And he's the wood country. Okay, so look, only thing they're really possessing here's Mount Ephraim. Okay, is this little area, and they're in this area here, and they're on this, and the reason is it's fortified. Okay, because of the high ground, it's harder to take. They got this fortified area, but they're not really, down here in the valleys. And there's the Valley of Jezreel. Valley, it's over this way eventually. Okay, right down in the valley, Jezreel Valley goes up here like that. Okay, kind of shapes down, loops down here towards Jerusalem, loops all the way down around here and kind of goes like that. Anyways, this Jezreel's Valley, the not only are they bigger and stronger, they have better technology. Remember, God had them destroy all the chariots before the wooden chariots. These are chariots of iron. These can't be burnt like the other ones were. And so, and so that was their complaint. But Joshua's response, he's not sympathetic to them at all. He's not like saying, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'll give you something easier to do." No, he turns their own words against them. If you're really great, then go get it. Quit whining and go get what God's given you. And then he tells them they're going to be able to do it. Because if God's in it, it'll work out. It doesn't matter about the problem. It doesn't matter what the other side has. It doesn't matter what looks impossible, because it is impossible for man. But what's impossible for man is possible with God. And with God, all things are possible. Remember the words of Messiah. Yahweh Waveh, Yahuwah Yahweh, however you think those letters should be pronounced. All things are possible to God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Nothing is too hard for him. And when he's with you, you will be able to do what you cannot do on your own. And yeah, you may have some you may think that God has something more for you and you're supposed to do it. And there's obstacles. Don't whine about them. Go forward, trust God, and do what you're supposed to do, and he will make it happen for you. This is why Joshua tells them they're not going to have this one lot, only this little mountain, and that's it. The mountain's yours, for it is a wood, and you shall cut it down. You're going to get that whole mountain. That's the little part where your fortification is, where you're all hunkered down and packed in together like sheep in a sheep pen, stepping on each other. You're going to go out there and get that rural land around it. You are able to take all their possessions. It doesn't matter. Look, he's not ignoring the problem. He's not saying the problem's not there. He's saying the problem's there. Iron chariots, and they are strong. Not, perhaps the giants in particular. The problem is real. Faith is not denying the existence of a problem, but acting on the knowledge that God will help you to overcome it. And when you're doing that, you need to stay in your own boundaries. It's not the will of God for you to go outside your boundaries like we saw Manasseh and Ephraim doing. Instead of dealing with the problem and overcoming the problem that they were to solve, that they were to take care of and to overcome. Now, we're going to go to Joshua 18, verses 1 through 5 to finish up our last section here. And the whole congregation of Israel assembled together at Shiloh and set up the tabernacle for the congregation there, and the land was subdued before them. And there remained among the children of Israel 7 tribes, which had not yet received their inheritance. And Joshua said to the children of Israel, "How long are you slack to go to possess the land which the Lord your God has given you? give you out from among you 3 men of each tribe, and I will send them, and they shall rise and go throughout the land and describe it according to the inheritance of them. And they shall come again to me, and they shall divide it into 7 parts. Judah shall abide in her coast in the south, and the house of Joseph shall abide in their coast in the north. Okay, that attitude we talked about with Ephraim, with the children, the house of Judah, with it, concerning the boundaries. Not well, they're not the only ones. Notice these other 7 tribes have developed this same attitude. They're all packed together again down here in Gilgal in this area here, all inside, the coast of Ephraim. What later will become part of Benjamin, perhaps, but mostly they're up here in this Ephraim area here, along here. Perhaps they got a little possession of Judah here, and they're wanting to stay there. They want to stay in these fortified areas where they feel safe instead of going. And remember, now I mentioned this. Remember, we'd read that he went all the way up to here. They went up all the way up to here, about a 20-mile wide thing. Destroying all these cities and whatever. But they came back, and now other people have moved in. They have to go back in there and redo it. It shouldn't be as hard as the first time. There's going to be less people because they had people moved from other cities into the areas they went to. They left vacant. They're not as well established and well armed and whatever. But they have to go up there and perhaps in some cases retake what they've taken before, and they have to do something instead of relying on other people to do it. Each tribe is to take possession of its own land. Okay, Ephraim is, and this become clear in a future lesson. Ephraim was to clear out. Now the job's been divided proportionally to their numbers. Judah. We'll talk about why Simeon in another lesson here. But we talked about before their cities. They're scattered. Remember, they're scattered among cities. Well, they're going to have to take their possession of their land. Judah's response. Now it's divided. Judah has his responsibility here. Dan here. Benjamin here. Ephraim here. Manasseh, well, really here. It sort of took some of the land from Asher and Issachar. Asher and Issachar are here. But it's not supposed to be doing that if it's respecting its boundaries. Anyway, but they all been given little sections to clear out, individually. They've been working together, all 12 of them. And these are supposed to go back home, are going to go back home to their possession. And that's very important because they're going to continue growing crops and things to feed the armies of these other tribes so they can continue on in this arrangement here. Okay? In this arrangement here, they're going the other armies. I guess I was wrong with Gilead. Gilead's all on the east side. Half is south, half is north. But anyways, but they got to actually go do it. And they too are whining. And Joshua's answer to them is this, they aren't doing it. He's saying, we divide the land, we got the map, we've given their part, and you're not getting their part. We've already cast for that. And again, the house of Joseph was determined because of Joseph wanted to be buried in Shechem. And they promised to bury him there. Okay. Ephraim, Joseph. So that part, and because remember, these two are to be together as the children of Joseph. So the land of Joseph, both of these. Judah has his part here along here down south. Okay. Defined. And why? Because of Caleb, which we'll discuss later, because he's promised a certain inheritance, and it's in this part down here. And also Joshua's gotten promised a certain inheritance, and it's in this land of Ephraim also as well. Okay, so you got these factors here that sort of determined roughly where theirs was going to be, and he's telling them you can't just live in their land. You got your own land. We're going to divide. No, so go out and scout it out and we're going to divide it. And you go take possession of your land as well. And here's what we see, and here's how we end Joshua 18, verses 6 through 7. You shall therefore describe the land as 7 parts, and bring the description here to me, and I shall count loss for you before the Lord our God. For the Levites shall have no part among you, for the priests of the Lord is their inheritance. And Gad and Reuben and the half tribe of Manasseh have received their inheritance beyond the Jordan on the east, which Moses the servant of the Lord gave them. Okay, so there's only 7 left. Two and a half have received over here. The other half and 2 others have received over here. These 7, count Simeon, Benjamin, Dan, Issachar, Zebulun, Asher, and Naphtali, hasn't been cast yet to determine where theirs is at, okay? But it's going to be cast, and then they're to go get it. It's not given them. And the Levites don't have one because, notice the third aspect of the priesthood is their inheritance. The Lord's their inheritance. The sacrifice, the priesthood is their inheritance. And with the priesthood comes the tithes, by the way. 1/10 of everyone else's income is coming into them. As mentioned, cities and cities scattered among them is the inheritance of the Levites. They have to have somewhere to live, a source of income, a job, and a place to live are 3 things every person needs, and God wants to provide those. He's never wanted to provide a means for anyone to be lazy. We showed even in the reign of Messiah, the people of Israel have a job to do. People are like, oh, they have so many. They take care of all their farm work and everything else. Yeah, it's free up their time to do a couple of other jobs, as we looked at in detail when we talked about the tribulation, the kingdom during the fall holidays last year through Sukkot, etc. So they're going to give them, and so and the lesson here is this: the final lesson. We need to quit trying to think other people have it better than us. Try to get what they have. Look for something easier to get from them than to get what we have. Know what our boundaries are that God's placed in our lives, and stay within them. And know there's going to be problems. And when they do, don't whine, don't complain. Again, text God off, as we saw constantly. We looked at the Acts of Moses. You can come to him and say, hey, I'm afraid. And he'll tell you, be courage, good strength. And he'll strengthen you. He already knows you're afraid. Even Messiah feared what was to come upon him, we're told in Hebrews. Fear is not the problem, but it's the fearful, those who rule by fear of the lake of fire. Those who let fear keep them from carrying out the will of God in their life. There is a promise. God has a promised land to you, figuratively speaking. Something in your life good he wants to give you. But he's not going to hand it over to you without you doing anything, as we've seen over and over again. And when he does, it's not going to necessarily not have any problems. He may leave things in there you have to deal with for his purposes that we'll discuss in a future lesson. But do not be trying to go outside the boundaries he's placed for you, thinking it'd be easier to take what they've got, or I can deal with their problem easier than mine. I'm gonna go over there and muddy up what they have, and muddle things. Stay in the boundaries of what God gave you. When you come across the problems, resistance is essential. Trust him. Do it his way, and those problems will be overcome eventually. And you will grow stronger in the process. That's all I have for this week. Until next week, shalom.